Going from roommates to lovers again. I'm going to show you why Christian couples slowly become roommates and how to fix it in 8 weeks without years of counseling or therapy. Even if you've been coexisting and stuck in the same patterns for years. So here's who this is for. If you love your spouse, but you feel disconnected, the conversations turn into arguments with complete silence, the intimacy feels distant and even forced, and Christ is not completely at the center and leading the relationship. This is for you. Do you know that most couples can't afford not to work on their marriage right now? Do you know that most couples can't afford to keep going to counseling sessions weeks after weeks, talking about past traumas and old wounds while their marriage is completely dying? And do you know that most couples, as they work on the marriage, those past traumas and old wounds also get worked on and worked out? So if you want to feel emotionally connected, if you want to be desired by your partner and have passionate intimacy and spiritual unity, this will be the most important 30 minutes you spend this year. Why me and what do I do? I've been married for over a decade now, and there was a time and a season in my marriage where we loved each other, but we felt like strangers. We were going through the motions, busy with kids, raising kids in life, but really there wasn't a connection. And as a counselor, that was the hardest part for me because I knew what to do, and yet we still felt stuck. I am a licensed professional counselor. I'm also a Christian marriage coach and strategist. I don't just give advice. I help you heal what's actually broken. Listen, it's not your fault. The real problem is trying to solve deep emotional and spiritual wounds without the right support and with surface level fixes. Most couples don't have a communication problem. They have unhealed emotional and spiritual wounds. Here are some examples of unhealed wounds: rejection, abandonment, shame, neglect. So you've probably tried going out on more date nights, talking things out over and over again, maybe ignoring the issues and hoping they just fade, and maybe even praying more, but still feeling stuck. So here's why they didn't work. They only treat symptoms, but never really heal the root. The real problem is this: it is unresolved emotional wounds and lack of emotional safety. It is not because you don't love God enough. It is not because you don't love your spouse enough. Here are the symptoms of unresolved wounds and lack of emotional safety. You avoid vulnerability, you stay guarded, and you react instead of responding from understanding. Here are some emotional wounds. And here is what the narrative is with emotional wounds. Rejection, I'm not wanted. Abandonment, people always leave me. Betrayal, I cannot trust anyone. Neglect or emotional deprivation. The core belief is that my needs don't matter. Shame, something is wrong with me. Humiliation, I am foolish, exposed, or inferior. Injustice, right? I was wronged. Powerlessness, I have no control. Unworthiness, I'm not enough. So here are the root causes to lack of emotional safety. Childhood environment, where you brought up and were grown up. Parents were emotionally dismissive. You were punished for expressing your feelings. Chaos, unpredictability, and spiritual neglect was the norm. Relational trauma. You experience infidelity, constantly being criticized, and there is betrayal and broken trust. Communication patterns, right? Harsh tones and sarcasm, interruptions, and a lack of empathy. And here's how it shows up in the marriage. You filter instead of express. For example, it's not worth saying. They won't understand anyways, right? This leads to emotional distance and silence and silent resentment. Defensiveness replaces curiosity. Vulnerability feels unsafe. Feel like you're walking on eggshells. There's an emotional shutdown and escalation cycles where one partner pursues while the other one is withdrawing. As long as you have these, you will keep repeating the same cycles. You will keep feeling disconnected and living like roommates. So, what I'm about to share with you is not about more date nights, forced activities, or compromise. It's a completely different way to rebuild intimacy and trust. It is vision for the mission that you're gonna need. It's not just communication tips or surface level relationship advice or forced intimacy exercises. Again, it's a completely different way to heal your relationship. It's called the Lovers Again system. It is a structured, faith-integrated, clinically grounded process that will help you heal emotional and spiritual wounds, restore safety in the marriage, rebuild connection, and reignite intimacy. Step 1, you have to identify what the real emotional wound is. Not just what you're arguing about, but really what's underneath that. What you really want them to understand but can't say. You have to understand God's design for the marriage. You have to rebuild emotional safety, create a safe space for vulnerability, where there is no rejection or defensiveness, or the fear of rejection even. Where you can create nurturing engagement cycles. Third step is we have to rewire communication patterns, where we shift from being reactive to emotionally attuned in our conversations, where we listen to understand and not to defend, respond with empathy and not frustration. This is the lover's lifestyle. Step 4, right? We will reignite emotional and physical intimacy, where you restore the closeness through intentional connection and micro moments daily, right? Where physical affection is safe again and you guys are spiritually aligned. It's establishing oneness. Here's where faith comes into it, right? God is the designer of marriage. He created marriage to be a healing system. So connection, unity, and intimacy, we see it in Genesis 2:24. The two shall become one flesh, right? We'll talk about Ephesians 5. Love is rooted in sacrifice and understanding. So the key is this: God didn't design your marriage to survive. He designed it to thrive. So here's what happened when a couple applied this process. They went from barely speaking, having constant tension and avoidance, no sex, and very little affection, to where they laugh together, pray together daily. They're open emotionally. Now they're having sex and physical affection restored for them in just 8 weeks. Other couples that went through the process, right? They went from not touching for months to feeling emotionally and physically connected again in just a short time. Some even say they feel like they're dating and learning each other again. And now they even worship and serve Christ together. So imagine this, right? You wake up feeling peaceful and not tense. You enjoy the conversations again. You feel emotionally and physically connected. You feel supported, understood, and wanted. And you no longer feel like you're walking on eggshells, or literally walking on eggshells. You're not avoiding each other, and you're not feeling like roommates and alone while married. So if this is what you truly want, then the next step is really simple. A relationship restoration call. So on this call, this is where we're going to identify patterns that are keeping you stuck. We're going to show you what's actually breaking the connection. And we're going to map out the next steps to help you rebuild the intimacy. I only take 5 to 7 calls per week because I work closely and intentionally with each client. And I'm also a counselor, so I have to work on that as well. So if you want transformation now, not months from now, act today. And remember, you're not struggling because you don't love each other. You're struggling because you don't feel safe with each other. And the longer this pattern continues, the harder it becomes to reconnect. You have nothing to lose, really. The worst case is that you leave here, you leave the call with clarity and a plan. And then the best case is you rebuild the connection and become the lover that God created you to be. You have a lot to gain. Again, you don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to live like roommates. And your marriage is not beyond healing. Your marriage is not beyond restoration. So click below to book a call with me, and let's get to work.